Hello, Warren Democrats. Let me start tonight with a very special thank you to Sharon and to Maura, our two fabulous ASL interpreters for this evening. Thank you both for being here. I wish we could all just be together in person. We could be taking selfies and sharing stories and getting geared up for the fights ahead, but we know that's just not possible right now. So even so, I am so honored to be here tonight with my friend, my colleague, my partner, Ed Markey, and that's for two reasons. The first is to say thank you. This is a time of tremendous crisis for our nation. People are dying from COVID-19, hundreds every single day. Our economy is being squeezed to the breaking point, and people can no longer deny the evidence of profound racial injustice across this country. And as if we didn't have all of that going on, now the Republicans are trying to steal another Supreme Court seat, one that could undermine our values for generations to come. This is tough. It is really tough. But leaders like Ed and strong Democrats like all of you, don't give up. You know what this fight is about, and you stay in it. Our job is to win up and down the ballot. And that is just what Warren Democrats have done over the past few months. We have been making spaces for new leaders and new voices in the fight for big structural change. We've stood shoulder to shoulder with our friends and our allies, seeing each other's fights as our own. And no matter what we have faced, we have persisted. As of today, we have endorsed and supported more than 120 candidates. Bold, courageous leaders like Sarah Gideon taking on Susan Collins in Maine, Jamie Harrison taking on Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, and Teresa Greenfield taking on Joni Ernst in Iowa. And that is just a portion of just the Senate list. We're working on House seats and state House seats and state attorneys general. We are going to continue to fight for progressives up and down the ballot. And here's what I love about all of our hard work. We're just getting started, because we have a job to do in November, beat Donald Trump. But we got to go further. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris need and deserve Democrats up and down the ballot who will fight for the kind of change that touches people's lives. There is just simply too much at stake. Pick any issue you care about, and it is on the line in this election. If it's dismantling systemic racism, think about our choice. Donald Trump stirs up as much racial hatred as he can. Joe Biden has been clear that as president, he will strengthen America's commitment to justice, and he will lead the reforms to our criminal justice system. If you worry about how student loan debt crushes opportunity, Donald Trump keeps Betsy DeVos in place, and she is squeezing students dry. Joe is in the fight for student loan debt cancellation and tuition-free public college. If you know the importance of appointing judges who are committed to justice, Republicans are trying to steal a second Supreme Court seat so that they can overturn the Affordable Care Act and take away health care coverage for tens of millions of people and end protection for people with pre-existing conditions. Joe Biden has promised to appoint U.S. Supreme Court justices and federal judges who look like the rest of America, who understand the importance of individual civil rights and civil liberties, and who respect essential precedents like Brown versus the Board of Education and Roe versus Wade. And even with all of that said, we still face an uphill battle. And that is where you come in. To make change, we need to take action. We need to keep working to build a grassroots electoral movement that can unite and excite Democrats and excite Americans to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. We need Democrats who are not afraid to dig down deep and fight for what they believe in. So today, I'm asking all of you, dig a little deeper, because this is the moment we have been called to. Go to ElizabethWarren.com and find more ways to get involved. You know, these fights are hard, but you don't get what you don't fight for. So I'm just delighted to be here with you today, and I'm delighted to be here with my co-conspirator in the fight for big structural change, Ed Markey. Ed, how are you and Susan doing?
You know, here's the thing. Bruce and Susan just have to accept the fact that there's some genetic malfunction that you and I have, that we love this business, and we are energized fighting Donald Trump every single day.
You bet.
And Susan, you know, my wife was the Assistant Surgeon General of the United States. And when you're in bed in the morning and you say, oh, another Trump tweet, Susan always says, get up, go and fight the Republicans all day long, you'll feel better. So you come home at night, you fought them all day and you feel better. The next day you get up and you have the same exact cycle you have to go through. You can't believe how bad he is. So you and I, we're just so lucky to have the partners that we have that give us that extra push to go into fight every day. And that's why it's so great to be on with all these wonderful people who are just as committed.
Yep, that's what this is about. So tonight, what I thought we would do here, Ed, is our supporters had some questions for us. So the team has pulled the questions out, and what do you say? You want to do these?
I'm ready to go.
I'll do one, you do one, we'll get this done. Okay, so I've got our first question here, and I really love this. This is from Annabelle from California, and she asked, are you ready for this? Senator Markey, what do you think about renaming Massachusetts to Markey-choosets?
You know, I think my mother would like that, but I actually feel that Warren-choosets has a better ring to it.
Oh, clever, clever. Oh, but really, you have to admit, we did have a lot of fun on primary day in Massachusetts.
Oh my goodness, it was an amazing victory, and you had my back throughout the whole race, and the whole Warren universe was just giving me the win to go and to win that race, because I ran on a progressive agenda. I ran on all of the things: Green New Deal, Medicare for all, racial justice, as you're saying, that have to be the structural reformations that we, next January, as soon as Joe Biden's sworn in, that becomes the agenda for the country. So it was a great victory night, but it was because the issues, that have the charisma.
And that's what we're really putting our shoulder to. So let me ask a real question, although that was pretty good. Daniel from New Hampshire asks, in order to save humanity from the worst effects of global climate change, we need to adopt the Green New Deal or something like it. So how do you convince enough people to bend the trajectory of our currently unsustainable ways? Ed?
That's an excellent question. And from my perspective, the Green New Deal is on the ballot on November 3rd. The Paris Climate Agreement is on the ballot on November 3rd. And if we want to have fundamental change in the way in which we deal with the climate crisis, beginning at noon on January 20th of 2021, as soon as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are sworn in, then we have to do everything we can for the next 5 weeks to win this election. And from my perspective, it's the moral, economic, environmental, national security issue of our time. And young people especially showed up in my race, the Sunrise Movement. young activists all across Massachusetts and the country, which came into my race. And that was noted by all political commentators in America, that young people showed up. We think we might have doubled the under 35 turnout in Massachusetts from 2018. That's how big the turnout was. So from my perspective, we know that we can change the world. We know that if we just deal with this problem the way the oil, gas, and coal industry have done it for 100 years, getting all the tax breaks they want, but then calling it socialism for us, well, give us some of the socialism they've had for all those years. And for wind, for solar, all electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, for battery storage technologies, just get out of the way, because we will bury the fossil fuel industry. And if we show up on election day, if we organize and then we get the credit for it, there'll be a big IOU on January 20th that we can cash in with the big structural changes that we need in our country. So let's just go out there and do it. The Green New Deal, fundamental change, it's all there for the taking, but we have to earn it over the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, Ed. The notion that we're in this fight and then we do have a big IOU to collect as progressives and as people who care deeply about the climate crisis. I'm so glad Daniel asked about this. You know, I just wanted to say to you, Daniel, I'll say this in front of Ed, we have such a terrific leader in Ed Markey. He's helping lead the charge for the Green New Deal so that we can save our planet and transform our economy into one that works for everyone. So I know that Ed and I are going to keep pushing from the inside in Washington, but it really does take this outside push, a big grassroots movement on the outside. And that is exactly the kind of movement that the climate activists have built. People are with us on this one. More and more people are seeing the effects of record floods, terrifying wildfires, devastating hurricanes. And this matters because when more people see what's broken, then we have a better chance to change it. And I know there are the Republican climate deniers in Washington. They stick their heads in the sand, they jam their fingers in their ears, they ignore all the science. They are bought and paid for by the fossil fuel industry. But this November, we really have the chance to just vote them out. Next January, just like Ed said, we can start rooting corruption out of Washington so that the fossil fuel giants don't get to call the shots anymore. We can elect leaders who believe in science, who will take bold action to solve the climate crisis, who will help us do that while creating good union jobs, and who are going to put environmental justice front and center. I feel so optimistic that we put our shoulders to it over the next 5 weeks, that after that, we're going to get this done. So I love this.
Excellent.
Ed,
now,
you got a question?
I have a question for you, and this one comes from Beth in Ohio. And here's what she asks. She says, my husband and I are both public school teachers. I also have a good amount of student loan debt. How can we make sure that we can continue the work we love, but also provide for our 2 boys and not be saddled with debt or lose our jobs to privatization of education?
So first of all, thank you, Beth, for all of the work you and your husband do. It is powerfully important. You know, when I was in 2nd grade, it was my public school teacher, Mrs. Lee, who told me that someday I could be a teacher, and it changed my whole world. I was able to live my dream and to become a public school teacher, but that's because I grew up at a time when I could get a college degree for $50 a semester, and that's just not possible today. So I think of this, Beth, as we got to think about all the parts to it. We need to tackle the student loan debt crisis head on. It's crushing millions of Americans and holding back our whole economy. One of the best ways that our government can give meaningful relief to struggling Americans right now is to cancel student loan debt. I've got a plan for that with Senator Schumer for how the next president, you're going to love this, can use executive authority, not have to go to Congress, use executive authority to get it done. And like you said, we also need to stop the privatization and the corruption of our public school system. So top of the list, let's get a new Secretary of Education starting in January. Betsy DeVos need not apply. That means keeping our public school dollars in public schools, not forking them over to for-profit education companies. So I'm going to stay in this fight with you and your husband and with all of the public school educators out there, because I really believe when educators win, students win. And when students win, our whole nation wins. Every kid in America should have access to a high quality public education, no matter where they live, no matter the color of their skin, no matter how much money their parents make or what zip code they live in. This is something we should guarantee for all of our children.
Well, you know, I was a commuter to Boston College and a commuter to Boston College Law School. And in the year in between, I was a substitute teacher in the Malden public school system for 1 year.
Yes.
That's what I did. I was a teacher. And by the way, that's a tough job.
No kidding, Ed.
It's a hard job. And I did it for 1 year as a substitute teacher. And I realized how difficult it is, how high the quality of teachers is and has to be in order to deal with all of the issues that get into a school system. And it's something that, from my perspective, I realize we have to ensure that the funding is there, which is why it's a sin that McConnell has refused to give us an ability to put $1 trillion back into the local communities so they have the money for the schools, they have the money to pay for teachers' salaries. It's an absolute disgrace what he has been blocking us from doing. But when I finished as a commuter at Boston College and Boston College Law School, I had a big knapsack of student debt on my back. My father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company. I was born, and then my twin brothers were born within 12 months. My mother had 3 boys in 1 year. And we're all going to college. We're all going to law school together. No spare cash. So we had to all take out the student loans. So I got elected to Congress, and I didn't pay back my student loans until my 6th year in the United States Congress. And what I had as student debt is just a fraction of what young people today have as student debt. So that's why I support Senator Warren's Student Loan Debt Relief Act, which eliminates up to $50,000 of student debt for anyone with an income under $100,000. And that bill, Senator Warren's bill, would provide relief to roughly 95% of all student loan borrowers, and it would cancel the entire debt for 75% of borrowers. That's the kind of thinking that we need in our country, to just unleash all of this young talent to go out and do what they have to do without worrying about whether or not they can pay back their loans, and therefore have to take a job they don't want to take, can't have the investment in the house, in anything that they might be otherwise interested in doing for themselves and their families. So Senator Warren's the leader on this issue. And once we win, that's why we need you all out there to do the work. That's going to be front burner issue in January.
Yeah, we got to do this one, Ed. Okay, so now I've got a question here from Liz from Illinois. And she asks, will you help address the issue of racism? The protests and violence will not stop till it is addressed. This is the perfect opportunity in time for great changes. Ed?
Yeah, well, that is just a great question, Liz, because let's be honest, we have a racist who is the president of the United States of America. And we also have a president who has been criminally negligent in the way in which he deals with the issues that have made it clear that racism is built structurally into every part of American society. In fact, he's trying to capitalize upon that racism as a way to drive up his vote so he can win on November 3rd. So that's why we have to be out there organizing, not agonizing for the final 5 weeks. And we just have to say, look, racism is built into our educational system, our healthcare system, it's built into our transportation system, it's built into our economic system, and it's really built in to our criminal justice system. We have 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the prisoners in the world. Not Russia, not China. It's the United States of America. We're 5% of the world's population. 1 in 3 women behind bars in the world are behind bars in the United States. Not China, not Russia, here in our country. And so Senator Warren and I, we've introduced legislation to repeal qualified immunity so that we can get justice for those families. If you just take the George Floyd family, we saw him murdered. We have the film. We can hear him begging that he cannot breathe, crying out for his mother. And now, under the law, that family can't sue that police officer, even though he murdered George Floyd. So from my perspective, from Elizabeth's perspective, it's time for us to put justice on the floor of the United States Senate for a debate. And
I
it's
like that.
every single aspect of these issues. Elizabeth.
I think you're right on that. Exactly right, Ed. We need big structural change to dismantle systemic racism and root out white supremacy. You know, as a nation, as a society, we have some serious soul searching to do. You rightly point out we've got racial disparities that persist in wealth, education, employment, housing, healthcare, at a time when COVID-19 is disproportionately killing Black Americans and when Black businesses are going under. You know, sometimes it feels like this is how it always has been and how it always will be. But we are not without hope. These injustices that we face are not inevitable. They were created and facilitated through racist, hateful, bigoted public policies. That means they can be addressed by different public policies, brave, inclusive, moral public policies. And the idea that communities of color alone are responsible for fighting against racism every single day is misguided, and it has dangerous consequences. So I want us to be thoughtful about the responsibility that I have, that others have as white Americans in this moment. We need to ask ourselves what we are doing proactively every day to dismantle systemic racism in our communities, in our workplaces, in our circles of influence. It is not enough to stand as an ally. White Americans must go further and be anti-racist, to educate ourselves, to donate, to show up, to protest, to bear witness, and to center Black voices. We have to make real change. Ed. All right, you got a question?
Great answer, yeah, great answer. And a question from Paul from California. If Joe Biden becomes president next year, what do you see as the most effective means for citizens to engage to either keep or get him on board with a progressive agenda?
Okay, Paul, great question, but first things first, let's make sure we get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris into the White House next year. That is the only way we're going to make any bold progressive reforms that we need in this country. You know, the good news is Joe is a leader who listens. He builds coalitions, he hears multiple perspectives, and his animating concern is to help the most people possible. I see this as there is so much opportunity for progressive victories with Joe Biden. And we've already seen that in areas like student loan debt, where he is completely on board. Joe and Kamala have already committed to strong progressive priorities. They've committed to creating new union jobs in clean energy, committed to increasing Social Security benefits, committed to making our bankruptcy laws work for families instead of for the creditors who cheat them. They've committed to making the wealthy pay their fair share, committed to repairing racial inequities. They have committed to fighting corruption in Washington. So we're going to fight from the heart to win in November. And as progressives, you asked, how are we going to get things done? Remember, we're fighting for the White House, but we're also fighting for the Senate and up and down the ticket. We elect Democrats up and down the ballot because that gives us much more leverage to push to enact bold progressive policies in cities, in towns, in states all across this country, and to hold our leadership in DC accountable. That's what we're going to do.
And I agree with you, Elizabeth. We're at a moment here where if we take unapologetically progressive stances, we drive it into this election day. We show that they're winning issues, that people respond to it, that it drives up turnout, especially amongst young people, then we're going to be in a very strong position to ensure that we have a progressive agenda. And Joe Biden has already made it very clear that that's going to be his goal. But we need to make sure that it's reflected in the votes to turn out on election day, because that will only reinforce the momentum that we need to make that progressive agenda the law in our country. So I agree with you 100%.
Good, good. Last question. Okay, let's wrap it up with a good one here. This is, let's see who we got here. We've got Eleanor from Massachusetts. And Eleanor says, I am so worried about this election and sometimes already feel defeated. How do I stay positive and energized to make a difference before November?
Well, Eleanor, stay around young people. That's what I just did in my race. Young people are up, they're activated. Young people they're walking, talking political antidepressants. Just figure out how to plug into this incredible network of young people who are organizing right now across the country online, and just stick with them, because you'll feel that the future is actually going to be better than the present or the past.
Oh, so I like that.
That's my recommendation to you, because that's what happened to me. I got energized more every single day. I got younger and younger. I was like a political Benjamin Button in this race. I got younger and younger the longer this race went on, and you will be too. So just find out where the websites are, how you can plug in to the Zoom events that are going on, how you can be working with them to make the calls, to do all the work that's going to be necessary, and you'll feel that you're part of something special that's going to be like 1932, that the big revolution is in place that lays the predicate for the fundamental change, the 1933 type changes which are going to happen next year. So thank you. And just get out there and get that work done. So Elizabeth, what's your recommendation?
Well, I'm glad Eleanor asked, and it's a great way for us to wrap this up. I know these fights can be hard, and we've been at it a long time, but I'm here today to remind everyone that this is a fight to put government on the side of the people. We don't give in to fear, and we don't back down. We persist. You know what keeps me going? I'm inspired by all of the people like you who are in this fight every day. I'm inspired by the people who showed up to do this Zoom call because they care. I'm inspired by all the people who are working as hard as they can to help elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who are helping elect Democrats all across this country. I am inspired by everyone who is making calls, who is sending texts, who's pitching in a few bucks to help end this dark chapter in our history. we must remember that hope is not given to us. It is created by us. We are in a moment of crisis, but we are also in a moment of change. And in this election, we do have a choice. We have a choice to choose hope over hate, to choose compassion over cruelty, to choose empathy over ego, to choose facts over fear, and we can't afford to miss it. This is our chance. This is our chance to build an America that works for everyone. That's why we're in this fight. Ed, I'm just so glad to have you as a partner in the Senate. I'm so glad to have you as a partner in these fights. And I'm so glad to have you as a partner here tonight. And thank you to everyone who joined us. We're going to stay in this fight. We're going to watch Joe Biden rock it tonight. Yes, yes, yes. Come on, Joe. And we're going to get this done. The White House, the Senate, the House, Democrats up and down the ticket, progressive Democrats, the people who are committed to make the changes that we need to make in our nation. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Great
Good
night.
night.
Great
Thank
night.
you.